Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
I am always excited to delve into a new topic.
Well, today we're tackling something you probably use every day, but maybe haven't given much thought to.
Let me guess. Is it one of those things that's hiding in plain sight?
You got it. We're talking silicon.
Silicon. The heart of our digital world.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Silicon is so much more than just computer chips.
You're right, it really is. I mean, think about it. Silicon's literally everywhere.
That's what's so fascinating to me. We've got a whole stack of sources here. Textbook chapters, a Q&A with a professor, even some recent research papers.
Sounds like we're going deep.
And they all point to this. Silicon is this hidden powerhouse shaping everything from the ground we walk on to, get this, the sparkle and gemstones.
Now that you mention it, I do remember reading something about silicon and gemstones. Opals.
Opals, right.
Opals.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, let's tackle the basics.
All right, back to basics. What's the first thing that jumps out at you from these sources?
Well, one thing that really struck me is just how abundant silicon is. Like, it's the second most common element in the Earth's crust.
It's true, it's everywhere. But here's the question. If it's so abundant, why isn't it more reactive? Why don't we see it, just spontaneously bursting into flames or something?
Right. You'd think with all that silicon around, it would be interacting with everything. But it's not. It's actually pretty stable.
Exactly. And that stability all boils down to silicon's atomic structure.
Okay, give us the breakdown. What's going on at the atomic level that makes silicon so chill?
Picture this. A silicon atom has a full outer shell of electrons. Kind of like a perfectly packed suitcase, No room for anything else. Its content stable, not looking to interact with other elements. Plus, it's got a relatively hefty atomic mass, which means there's a strong attraction between its nucleus and those electrons.
So it takes a lot of energy to break those bonds and get silicon to react, right?
Precisely. That's one of the reasons silicon is so useful in so many applications. It's reliable, predictable. You know it's not going to suddenly decide to change its properties.
Okay, so silicon is like the strong, silent type of the periodic table.
Haha. I like that analogy. It perfectly captures silicon's stable nature. And you know what? This stability is actually directly tied to something that keeps popping up in our sources. Silicon's diamond cubic crystal structure.
Ah, yes, that phrase. I was wondering if we were going to get to that. It sounds kind of intimidating. Break it down for us. What exactly does that mean?
Well, imagine this. A giant, intricate jungle gym, but instead of metal bars, it's made entirely of silicon atoms, all connected in this incredibly precise repeating pattern. Each atom is bonded to 4 others, forming a super strong, rigid tetrahedron shape.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. So it's this jungle gym arrangement that gives silicon its versatility. Like, it's a super strong building block that you can use to create all sorts of things.
Exactly. This structure is the foundation for so many of silicon's applications, from solar panels to computer chips. But here's where things get even more interesting. Pure silicon on its own isn't a great conductor of electricity.
Really? I thought silicon was the semiconductor, like the backbone of our entire digital world.
It is. But to get it to do that magic, we need to do something called duping.
Doping. Like as in enhancing its performance.
Exactly. Think of it like adding spices to a recipe. You're adding tiny amounts of impurities, elements like boron or phosphorus, to silicon to fine-tune its electrical behavior.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So by adding a pinch of this element or a dash of that one, you can actually change how silicon conducts electricity.
You got it. Adding boron, for example, creates holes where electrons are missing. These holes act like positive charges, making it easier for electricity to flow. That's what's called a p-type semiconductor.
Okay, so boron creates holes for positive charges. What about phosphorus?
Add phosphorus, and you get extra electrons floating around, creating what we call an n-type semiconductor.
Ah, I see. So you've got these 2 different types of semiconductors, p-type and n-type, and by cleverly combining them.
You can create things like transistors, the tiny switches that control the flow of electricity in all our gadgets.
Mind blown. So silicon's not just about structure, it's about carefully manipulating those electrons to create the digital world we know and love.
It's incredible, isn't it? And this whole process of doping, of controlling those electrons, is closely related to something else that's mentioned a lot in these sources: silicon's energy band gap.
Ah, yes, the energy band gap.
Yeah.
That one kept popping up, and to be honest, it went a bit over my head. Could you break it down for us?
Absolutely. The energy band gap is essentially the minimum amount of energy an electron needs to jump from a non-conducting state to a conducting state. And silicon just happens to have an energy band gap that's perfectly suited for semiconductor
So
applications.
it's kind of like a Goldilocks situation. Not too big, not too small, just right for controlling the flow of electrons with those impurities we talked about.
Precisely. And that's why silicon is such a star player in electronics. Its energy band gap makes it incredibly versatile and controllable, which is exactly what you need for things like transistors and integrated circuits.
Wow. It's fascinating to think about how something as tiny as an electron's energy level can have such a huge impact on our technology. And speaking of impact, silicon is also a major player in renewable energy, right?
Absolutely. Silicon is the key ingredient in solar panels, and that's thanks to something called the photovoltaic effect.
Okay, now you're talking my language. Solar panels are something I'm really interested in. How does silicon actually help turn sunlight into electricity?
Well, imagine this. When a photon from sunlight hits a silicon atom in a solar cell, it has enough energy to knock an electron loose, creating what's called an electron-hole pair.
So the photon is basically freeing up an electron to move around.
Exactly. And because of the way a solar cell is structured, there's an electric field present. This field causes the electron and the hole to move in opposite directions, generating an electric current.
So the silicon isn't just sitting there passively, it's actively helping create that flow of electricity from sunlight.
That's exactly it. And with the demand for renewable energy growing every day, silicon's role in solar panels is only going to become more important.
Absolutely. I mean, if we're going to tackle climate change, we need to harness the power of the sun, and silicon is playing a key role in making that happen.
It really is. Silicon is at the forefront of the clean energy revolution.
You know, I'm starting to think silicon is full of hidden talents. We've got structure, we've got electronics, we've got clean energy. Oh, and didn't I read somewhere that silicon shows up in gemstones too?
You did. We're talking about opals, those mesmerizing gems with their rainbow-like play of color. They're essentially made of tiny spheres of silica, which is silicon dioxide, arranged in a very specific way.
Wait, so the way these tiny spheres are arranged determines the colors we see in an opal.
Exactly. The spheres form what's called a diffraction grating, which bends light and separates it into different wavelengths, similar to what happens with a prism.
So it's the microscopic structure, that hidden order, that creates this big, beautiful visual effect. I love how nature works like that.
It's incredible, isn't it? This hidden world of order and structure that gives rise to the beauty we see all around us.
Okay, we've covered silicon in the earth, in our tech, even in gemstones. But get this, silicon isn't just an industrial material, it's part of us too.
That's right. Silicon might not be as abundant in living things as it is in rocks, but it still plays some pretty important roles.
So where does silicon show up in living organisms? Fill us in.
Well, for starters, it's crucial for many plants. It acts like a strengthening agent in their cell walls, almost like internal scaffolding. Think about bamboo, for instance, which gets its incredible strength from silica deposits.
So silicon is helping give plants their structure and resilience? That's fascinating.
It is, isn't it? And it's not just plants. We have silicon in our bodies too, mainly in connective tissues like bones, teeth, and cartilage. It's even involved in collagen production.
So from sturdy bamboo to our own flexible joints, silicon is quietly working behind the scenes. This is blowing my mind. It's like silicon is playing a role in every aspect of our world. And the future of silicon seems even more exciting, especially when it comes to these new materials that are being developed.
You're right. The research happening right now is pushing boundaries in ways we could only dream of a few years ago. We're talking about silicon-based materials with properties that sound like something straight out of science fiction.
Okay, now you've really got me hooked. Tell us more. What kind of crazy properties are we talking about?
Well, imagine materials that can heal themselves, adapt to their environment, or even mimic biological processes.
Self-healing materials. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's closer than you might think. Researchers are developing silicon-based polymers that can actually repair damage, similar to how our skin heals. Imagine the implications. No more cracked phone screens or crumbling bridges.
That would be a game changer.
Yeah.
And what about mimicking biological processes? What does that even mean?
That's where things get really interesting. Scientists are creating silicon-based materials that can interact with living cells and tissues, opening up incredible possibilities for advanced medical implants, and even tiny silicon robots that could deliver medicine directly to where it's needed in the body.
Wow, it sounds like silicon is key to unlocking a whole new era of technological advancements. But I have to ask, are there any downsides we should be thinking about?
Of course. With any new technology, we need to be mindful of the potential risks. And when it comes to silicon-based materials, we have to consider things like responsible sourcing and disposal to minimize environmental impact. We don't want to solve one problem only to create another.
That's an important point. Progress should always go hand in hand with responsibility.
Absolutely. As research moves forward, it's crucial to have open and honest conversations about the ethical implications of these technologies, making sure they are used for the benefit of humanity and the planet.
This deep dive has been incredible so far. We've gone from the depths of the Earth to the intricate workings of living organisms, all thanks to the wonders of silicon. And it seems like we're just scratching the surface of what this element can do.
That's the beauty of science, isn't it? There's always more to discover, more to learn.
Well, on that note, I think we need to take a quick break and let all this amazing information sink in. But don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to journey into the natural world and uncover some of the surprising and beautiful places where silicon hides in plain sight. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Ready to uncover some more silicon secrets?
Absolutely. After that last segment, I'm even more convinced that silicon is like nature's hidden superpower.
I think you're right about that. So where do you want to go next on our silicon adventure? We've talked about tech, we've talked about living things.
Let's see. Oh, what about gemstones? Didn't we mention something about silicon and gemstones?
You did. And it's not just opals. Think about quartz.
Quartz. Yeah, okay, I can see the connection there. Quartz is pretty common.
Yeah.
Right?
It's one of the most abundant minerals on Earth. And it's pure silicon dioxide.
So all those different types of quartz, amethyst, citrine, rose quartz, they're all basically silicon with a little something extra.
You got it. Their unique colors come from tiny amounts of other elements trapped within that silicon-oxygen framework, kind of like adding different dyes to create a rainbow of colors.
So it's the silicon-oxygen duo that forms the base, and then those trace elements add the personality.
Exactly. It's like silicon is the blank canvas, and those trace elements are the artist's brushstrokes.
I love that analogy. But quartz isn't just a pretty face, is it? It's used in a lot of technology too, right?
Absolutely. Quartz has these incredible piezoelectric properties.
Piezo what?
Piezoelectric. It means that when you squeeze or vibrate quartz, it generates an electric charge.
Really? So the same stuff that makes up a sparkly amethyst is also helping to keep my watch on time.
That's right. Quartz crystals are used as oscillators in all sorts of electronic devices, from watches and clocks to radios and even computers. Pretty impressive for something you can find in the ground, right?
Seriously impressive. Okay, so we've got silicon in gemstones, but let's zoom out a bit. What about silicon's role in the Earth's crust? We touched on that earlier, but I'd love to hear more.
Well, to understand that, we need to go deep beneath the Earth's surface to where magma is churning and bubbling.
Magma. Like molten rock. Okay, I'm picturing it.
Good. Now, silicon is a major component of magma. And as magma cools and solidifies, silicon-rich minerals like quartz and feldspar start to crystallize out.
So those granite countertops we see in kitchens are basically solidified silicon-rich magma.
That's a great way to put it. And over millions of years, these igneous rocks are broken down by weathering and erosion, eventually forming sedimentary rocks like sandstone.
Wow. It's mind-boggling to think about the vast scales of time and the incredible forces that have shaped our planet.
It really is. And silicon has been there through it all, playing a key role in that grand geological story. But let's shift gears now and talk about something much, much smaller. Diatoms.
Diatoms. Okay, I vaguely remember that term from biology class, but I can't quite picture them.
Think tiny single-celled algae that live in water. They're found in oceans, lakes, rivers, pretty much any body of water you can think of.
Okay, I'm starting to remember now. Weren't they those little guys with the intricate shells?
You got it. And guess what those shells are made of?
Silicon.
Silica, to be precise, silicon dioxide. They create these beautiful, intricate structures called frustules, almost like little glass houses.
Wait, so these tiny algae are building their homes out of glass?
They are. And those silica shells are not just pretty, they actually play a crucial role in the global carbon cycle.
Now, how do these microscopic algae have anything to do with the carbon cycle?
Well, diatoms are photosynthetic, which means they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use it to make their own food. And when they die, their silica shells sink to the ocean floor, trapping that carbon with them.
So they're acting like these tiny carbon capturers, helping to regulate the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere.
Exactly. It's a remarkable example of how something so small can have a huge impact on a global scale.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is on our planet, doesn't it?
It really does. From the tiniest organisms to the largest planetary processes, it's all linked together, and silicon is right there at the heart of it all. But let's move from the oceans to the forests for a moment. Silicon is also a key player in the strength and resilience of many trees.
I know we talked about bamboo earlier, but what about other trees?
Silicon is found in the cell walls of lots of tree species, contributing to their rigidity, helping them stand tall, and even protecting them from pests and diseases. It's like a natural defense mechanism.
Wow. So silicon is helping those trees weather the storms, literally. And I bet it's also helping them absorb more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
That's right. It's like a win-win situation. Silicon helps strengthen the trees, and those trees help keep our planet healthy by absorbing carbon. It's a perfect example of how nature works in these beautiful cycles.
I'm starting to think of silicon as nature's secret weapon, providing strength and resilience wherever it goes. Is there anything silicon doesn't do?
Well, it's true that silicon is incredibly versatile, but let's not forget about the animal kingdom. We've talked about plants, but silicon actually shows up in some surprising places in the animal world, too.
Really? I thought silicon was mainly a plant thing. Where does it show up in animals?
Well, it's not as common in animals, but it does play some important roles. Take marine sponges, for instance. Some species have skeletons made entirely of silica, just like those diatoms we were talking about.
Hold on. There are sponges made of glass.
It's true, and even in vertebrates like us, silicon is found in small amounts in connective tissues, hair, and skin, although its exact function is still a bit of a mystery.
Wow. It seems like silicon's influence extends to every corner of the natural world. From the heart of the Earth to the intricate structures of living organisms, silicon is truly a force to be reckoned with.
It just goes to show that the most important things are often the ones we take for granted. Silicon might not be flashy or glamorous, but it's an essential ingredient in the story of our planet and the incredible tapestry of life that exists here.
This deep dive has been full of surprises. I'm starting to look at the world around me differently, seeing silicon's hidden influence everywhere.
That's the power of knowledge, isn't it? It changes how we see the world, revealing the hidden connections and the amazing stories unfolding all around us.
Absolutely. And speaking of amazing stories, I'm really excited to hear more about those cutting-edge silicon technologies you mentioned earlier, things that sound straight out of science fiction. But I think we need to take another quick break before we dive into that. We'll be back soon to explore the future of silicon. And we're back, ready to jump into the future of silicon.
Absolutely. This is where things get really exciting.
Okay, before the break, you were teasing us with these mind-blowing possibilities of silicon-based materials. Stuff that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, get ready, because science fiction is becoming science fact. We're talking about materials that can heal themselves, adapt to their environment, or even mimic biological processes.
Okay, self-healing materials. I've got to hear more about this. How does that even work?
Researchers are developing silicon-based polymers that can actually repair damage, kind of like how our skin heals. Imagine a world where your phone screen could fix a crack on its own, or a bridge could repair a small fracture before it becomes a big problem.
That's incredible. It would be a total game changer. Less waste, fewer repairs. It sounds almost too good to be true. What about those materials that can mimic biological processes? That's the part that really blows my mind.
That's an area called biomimicry, and it's all about taking inspiration from nature to create new materials and technologies.
So we're talking about materials that can interact with living things, like on a cellular level.
Exactly. Silicon is proving to be incredibly versatile in this area. Scientists are developing silicon-based materials that can integrate with living tissues, deliver drugs with incredible precision, even create scaffolds for growing new organs.
Wow, it sounds like the possibilities are limitless. We could have implants that seamlessly integrate with our bodies, or even tiny silicon robots delivering medicine directly to where it's needed. What about artificial photosynthesis? I read a little about that too. Could silicon be used to create artificial systems that mimic how plants use sunlight to create energy?
You're exactly right. Researchers are exploring that very idea. Imagine if we could create devices that capture sunlight and convert it into energy, just like plants do, but even more efficiently. Silicon could play a key role in making that a reality.
It all sounds incredibly exciting, but I have to ask, are there any potential downsides we should be thinking about? I mean, with any new technology, there are always risks and unintended consequences.
You bring up a really important point. It's crucial to approach any new technology with a sense of responsibility, carefully considering the ethical and environmental implications. And when it comes to silicon-based materials, we need to be especially mindful of where we're sourcing the materials from and how we're disposing of them. We don't want to solve one problem only to create another.
That's a good reminder that progress should always go hand in hand with responsibility. We need to think about the long-term consequences of our actions and make sure we're not harming the planet or future generations in our quest for technological advancement.
I completely agree. It's a conversation we need to be having as a society. How do we harness the power of these new technologies while also ensuring that we're using them ethically and sustainably?
Well, I, for one, am incredibly excited about the future of silicon. From self-healing materials to biomimicry, it seems like silicon is poised to revolutionize countless industries. And who knows what other amazing discoveries await us as scientists continue to push the boundaries of what's possible.
I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the origins of silicon in the heart of our planet to its potential to shape the future of technology and even life itself.
It's been an amazing journey. I know I'm walking away with a whole new appreciation for this versatile element. So to everyone listening, I encourage you to keep exploring the world around you, look closer, ask questions, and never stop diving deep. Who knows what amazing discoveries you might make?